Hello everyone, this is DarkWorld1989 here, and I came across a pretty good creepypasta. It's called The Devil's Mimic, and I'm going to read it to you guys, and I'll give you my suggestion about it afterwards. So, just so you can get going, it starts like this. You know what our problem is? We're too damn accommodating. That's why I told my wife when she agreed to look after that awful bird. We already took after the friend's toddler every Thursday, and take a lady across the corner shopping. And then there, all the charity case kids. She teaches piano for free. It's just too much. So when her aunt, Margaret, asked us to look after her pet Mahana bird while she went to Belgium, I wanted to refuse, of course. My wife didn't. You must know the problem with a Maha bird. They mimic sounds that they enjoy hearing over and over again. I read on the internet about the Japanese woman who looked after her friend's Maha. After 3 days, the bird making the sound of a microwave, she just couldn't take it no more. Shut up or I'll make you into yakitori. Of course, that became the bird's favorite phrase, and the woman spent the next month trying to re-educate it. So, we spent the next 2 weeks on our best behavior. No swearing, no shouting, well, anyway. We were on our best behavior. My wife's aunt loves classical music, so we left the radio on Classic FM. Unfortunately, the bird grew fond of Alan Tishmarsh, so we had to switch it to BBC Radio 3. Apart from the fact the bird could intimidate the phone, bloody thing, I was waiting for a job interview. Everything went smoothly until 2 weeks into the stay. The first setback was a call from Belgium. The aunt had had an accident and needed surgery. She apologized profusely, asking us to look after the Maha until she found a friend to look after it. For a long time basis anyway. Annoying as it was, this was the minor inconvenience compared to what happened next. I confess that something about that bird's continuous chattering put me on edge. I found myself unable to sleep one night, staring barely at the ceiling. I heard a snatch of music from the next room. I looked at the alarm clock, 4 in the morning. I wondered, had something left the radio on? Or someone? Or was it the Maha? I wanted to ignore it, but it was making me on edge. I went to the next room and checked on the radio. Off. I turned to Maha. It was about to say something, but then, try as I might, I can't fully describe what happened next. Somehow, what the bird said to me, it's still etched into my soul. I hear each syllable clearly, yet I cannot manage to get it down on paper. I will try to describe it for you. A deep, guttural voice, wary but full of malice. It was as if the voice were coming out of the ground from a distant moss-eaten sculpture. What the voice said I couldn't understand, but it filled me with inescapable, crushing dread. It was both completely alien to me and yet at the same time instantly recognizable, as if I had known that voice since birth. In a moment, I was back in my bed, the covers pulled over my head, quaking as if my spine had turned into jelly. My wife, mercifully, is a heavy sleeper. Twice more that night I heard the snatch of the music, and then the voice. Each time the voice sounded nearer and nearer, and I could not help but shiver. In the morning, I asked my wife if she had any disturbed things in the night. Thankfully, she had not. I felt like asking to get rid of the Maha, but I knew that would make things worse. To be fair, I had been complaining about it for 2 weeks, and my bizarre story would sound contrived and only make things worse. When she went to piano lessons, I took a moment to think. Perhaps my dread last night had been born of the darkness, of sleeplessness and aggravation, the bird calls me. I needed to know whether my fear was justified. I just needed to know what the bird was saying. So, I got an MP3 recorder ready, and waiting for the bird to speak again. It had plenty to say. Mostly Garachu marks, for some reason, but never repeated the spectral voice. It was only at 4 o'clock in the next morning that I heard that snatch of music. I knew what was coming next. I grabbed the recorder, and I set running, and rushed into the next room. I heard the voice of a woman. "Go out," goes he. I recognized that. It was from an old black and white movie we had watched that evening. Slightly oppressive, I adjusted the volume slightly, and held the recorder to the bird. It cocked its head to one side, looked at me questioningly, and began its dark recital. I shuddered as I heard the deep voice, relayed by such an insidious form, and yet carrying behind it the malice of hell. But deep down, I felt I was winning. I had recording. The bird went through its act 3 times in about 2 hours. The music, the woman's voice, and that deep, haunting muttering. And I recorded it each time. The next morning, I listened to the recording. As soon as my wife left for work, in the daylight, I was able to recognize the music as part of the Walson's facade. But it was still sickening that I had listened back to that voice. Stupidly as it sounds, I was also happy that the recording had turned out so well. As I left, I said "Cheerio" to the Maha. "Tell him Gucho sent you," replied the bird. I don't get what it sees in Gucho marks. I spent the day taking my recording around to find out more about it. I took it to a library, the local language college, a cultural institute, even the sushi bar in case it was Oriental. In all cases, no one knew or had ever heard of a language spoken. Also, in all cases, they looked like at me as deadly pale when they heard the recording, and asked for me to turn it off, leave immediately. In fact, the sushi bar offered me some free maki if I promised to never come back. So, that was a plus. But I still had no progress to show. As a last resort, I decided to try the Catholic Cathedral. The cool stone floors of mosaic walls gave me a welcome respite. The sun, as I entered the cathedral, was dark as night inside, with a light emanating from the creepy above altar, like a tent on a hilltop. I looked around and gave a jump as I saw the priest sitting at the information desk. He was tall, quite old, almost skeletally thin. Under his thick glasses, he arranged his mouth into a thin smile. I gave a clumsy wave. I approached with some trepidation, and I told him why I had come. He listened to the recording in silence. His face displayed signs of recognition. Then he said, "Where did you get this?" I explained about the Maha that we were looking after. He considered this for a second, excused himself, and sauntered off. He returned with another priest, younger and rounder, with a walrus mustache. He listened to the voice of a second, before asking to see the Maha immediately. I took both priests to the flat and made them a cup of tea. And then 3 of us sat in silence, watching the bird. Once again, the bird never repeated the spectral voice. It seemed to only do it at night. The younger priest made no movement nor sound as he listened, whereas the older, skeletal priest waggled his hands apparently every time the Maha make it gucho, sometimes wheezing in appreciation. After a half an hour, the younger priest spoke. Mr. Stevens, thank you for alerting us to this extremely serious matter. You did the right thing. I'm happy to say that you aren't in any immediate danger. The bird is merely copying some person that has had heard saying this. He also does have an excellent gucho injection in the older priest. However, continued to the younger priest sternly, whoever said these words is in grave danger. I would ask you to find out where the bird learned these words and allow us to meet this person. But how should I find out? If I could be from the radio or the TV or... I very much doubt that. You must try to remember everyone who has spoken to the bird, said the priest. I looked into my tea and shuddered. The young priest sensed my reluctance and said, Mr. Stevens, you should be happy. You have a chance to save a soul. Such opportunities are not common. After they left, I started racking my brains, writing lists of everyone who had visited the flat. To be honest, I suspected my wife. She had been increasingly distant recently, and I knew for the fact that I had been out of a job for a long time, and it was taking a toll on our relationship. I did not know her voice could get like that, but I knew I didn't understand exactly what was dealing with either. A more promising solution, however, presented itself on the next day. Around lunchtime, the phone rang. I answered, but I felt my stomach turn and my heart race. When I heard the voice at the other end, it was deep, stony, baritone, somewhat more cheerful than the Mahaya's nocturnal chant, but with unmistakable menace. I tried to answer, but only choked when I tried to form words. Mr. Stevens, are you there? Yes, that's me, I replied, regaining my composure. You're looking after Margaret's Maha. Is that right? Yes. That's right. Oh, good. Margaret just phoned from Austin. She wants me to look after it. Can I pick it up from you tomorrow from the flat? Say around 4 p.m.? Yes, of course. See you tomorrow at 4. Of course, how did I miss that? It wasn't someone who came to this flat. The Maha must have learned it from a friend of Aunt Margaret's. I felt relieved, but only for a second. Was Aunt Margaret involved in... I didn't know. But I did know this friend of hers, and it was some way involved. Now I had a face to this man. This unknown terror. I didn't know what to expect. I was worried. If I had exposed this man, how would he react? Would it be safe? The next day came. A monstrous summer storm had gathered. The lull in the sky has dyed a dark green by the sapphire sun. Rain thrashed the windows and cried miserably as it slid into the gutters. It was Thursday, so we were babysitting again. This was bad timing. I didn't want the baby there when I confronted the stranger. I looked anxiously at my watch. 10 to 4. I shivered. One part of me wanted to just hand over the bird. Don't mention anything about the odd incantation. After all, why should I? I believe anything the priest told me. I knew what it was going to do, but then I heard the music. That little snatch of music, so simple, was so precursor of a demonic voice. The baby gurgled happily on the sofa. I didn't want someone so young to hear that voice, so I rushed to the bird. Now it started speaking in the woman's voice. I felt my heart leap into my throat. The first thought was to throttle the Maha, but I was interrupted by the voice. That terrible dark voice, every fiber in my body wanted to scream. The voice had come from the baby. Now, I have to say, that creepypasta is pretty good. I'm not going to lie. It it definitely gives it more of a dark tone. And seeing as this is my first creepypasta, it's really nice. It's not like it's covered in the typical creepypasta that I normally read when I'm just bored and it has blood and sucking the soul out. This one actually is darker. It's about the story of, you know, kind of taking everything for granted and winding up with something you don't want. And only to find out that this voice that was haunting him was coming from the baby. Makes me personally, as the reader, shocked. I was more interested in who was the person making the voice than, you know, them taking care of the bird. And just, for the ending being it was the baby. Opens up for another chapter, in my opinion. But we'll have to see if that actually happens. Until then, thank you for listening. I hope we have many more episodes like this, where great creepypastas come onto my channel that I can read for you. This is Dark World 1989, signing out. Thank you.